Welcome back, everyone, to Reading by Candlelight at Molly's Cottage. I'm here with Camille Booker, author of *The Woman in the Waves*, which features in the March crime and thriller book box. Welcome, Camille.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I need to mention here that Camille and I have been friends for a long time. We met online in author Holly Craig's Write Club. Holly herself has been a Reading by Candlelight author twice now, and Camille is also working with me on my novel, assessing my manuscript. So I can say with absolute confidence that Camille is an amazing writer and an even lovelier person.
Oh, you're too nice, Fiona.
Now, for our listeners, here's some background on Camille. She is an award-winning author, editor, literary judge, PhD student, and creative writing tutor at the University of Wollongong. She also has two small children, so she's probably exhausted.
Yeah, you're right.
She
I
writes She writes gothic historical fiction with morally grey female protagonists, chilling mysteries, and unique Australian settings. *The Woman in the Waves* is her multi-award winning second novel and will be published with Hawkeye Publishing next week. Congratulations, Camille.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now, I'm very interested, given what your book is about, to hear if you can explain it in a spoiler-free pitch.
Yeah, I will try. Now I've got some notes here because this is my first, elevator pitch, so I'm still trying to learn it. But *The Woman in the Waves* is my Peaky Blinders meets Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse novel with a feminist spin. It's a gothic historical fiction novel and a small town murder mystery set in 1921 in a fictional town called Widow's Peak on the south coast of New South Wales. Missy Green is the lonely fisherman's daughter who encounters a mermaid claiming to be her mother, a woman who mysteriously died in the waves when Missy was just 1 year old. She realizes that she's hallucinating and that the mermaid is actually a dead woman washed up on the shore. A second point of view is introduced with Detective Shaw, an Irish immigrant and World War I veteran. So Missy gets pulled into the investigation with Detective Shaw, and they have to grapple with the town's criminal underbelly, which is a grimy bootlegging operation that may be linked to her beloved grandfather, the town's reclusive lighthouse keeper. While Missy descends deeper into the murky waters of the case to find the killer and what really happened to her mother all those years ago, she begins to question everything she's ever known, even her own sanity.
Haha, see, it sounds so intriguing. There's so many things going on in this novel. It is brilliant. And now your work and studies must take a lot of your time as well as tending to your young family. How long did it actually take you to write this book?
So it took me a while, like it took me years. I had a vague idea of the novel. I knew I wanted to write about like a lighthouse and a spooky mermaid, but I didn't really have, the idea of the plot or anything. I just had Missy as a character and the coastal town setting. But yeah, so it took me about to get the first draft written, it took me about 6 months. And that's because I know it took that long because in 2022, I think it was, I enrolled in the Curtis Brown Creative online 6-month Write Your Novel course. So yeah, I had about 3,000 words going into that in the April. And then by the October of that year, I had a very rough first draft, and it was only because of that course and the motivation from the other students and the feedback, the constant writing and, Zoom catch-ups and the forum that we had, yeah, that I actually got it written. So, but then it took me many, many rewrites and, redrafts, beta readers, feedback, yeah, lots and lots of, drafts to get it to, where it is.
Yeah, because there's so much work that goes into writing a book, and it takes a long time. And I don't think that people often understand that, especially not when they're asking you how your book's going. And that Curtis Brown course is the one that Jane Harper did when she was
Oh,
writing The Dry. And so,
yeah.
excellent course.
Yeah, it's really good. And actually, I heard of it through Holly. I think she had done it. And I was thinking, that sounds really good. I wonder if, I'd be good enough for it because you have to send in your words and they judge you, and then they tell you whether you've gotten in or not. And I just wrote the 3,000 words, the opening chapter, and I was like, oh, I better, the deadline was like in 2 days. I'm like, I'll just submit it. I probably won't get in, but at least I know I've tried. And yeah, surprisingly, they allowed me to go in, and thank goodness, because yeah, I was able to write it. So yeah.
Not surprisingly at all, Camille. I've read your work, so not surprising at all. Now, this book had an interesting inception. Can you share where you were when you got the idea, when it came to you?
Yeah, so as I said, like I had a vague idea about, coastal setting, lighthouse, maybe a spooky mermaid, but didn't really know the plot. Um, so it was during COVID lockdowns that I was, daydreaming about this this book idea. And because we lived in Wollongong too on the south coast, it's the only town, I think, in the southern hemisphere with 2 lighthouses. So, yeah, it's during lockdown, nothing's open, all the activities that I would take my son to, who was a very active 3-year-old at the time, were all closed, no shops open, no playgrounds open. What do we do every day? So I would inevitably end up at the beach with him. We'd go to the lighthouse, or I would just help him dig tunnels in the sand and play cards with him all day. And I just remember once sitting there watching him play and looking out at the waves and the horizon and just thinking, imagine if I just walked into the water and swam away and disappeared and didn't come back. Like, what would that mean for my son and my husband and, the family? What would that ripple effect be, and how would they cope without, the mother? So that's where I had the idea, and it sort of struck me that, it's such an interesting thing to explore, because the mother is really what holds the family together. Without her, who would these people be and how would they cope? So yeah, I had the idea of Missy, losing her mother when she was very, very young and not really knowing how or why, and then the impacts of that on her, and as she grew older and feeling a little bit different from everybody else. So that's where the idea of, the plot really came from. But then I was thinking, well, that's not enough for a full novel. Like, that's maybe like the A story, but there also needs to be a B story that like moves the plot along. So then I was like, okay, I've got to actually think about, another subplot here. And then it was just randomly in the news, a dead body washed up on shore in Wollongong.
Oh, gosh.
A real dead body, yeah. But I was like, wow, that would make a really good inciting incident, finding a dead body. I think this person had just been at the pub and went for a late night swim and drowned. But yeah, sadly, I know. But then I thought, oh, that would make a really good mystery to solve. But I couldn't have Missy just solving a mystery because she's just a fisherman's daughter. So that's when I thought, okay, I need to bring in a detective. So then I had like my A story and B story and how to like weave them together.
Now see, I want to talk about this detective because Camilla and I don't just have a shared love of writing and books. We also share an affection, sometimes bordering on obsession, let's be honest, for actor Cillian Murphy. We adore him and everything, but we are huge Peaky Blinder fans, and he plays enigmatic lead character and gang leader Tommy Shelby. And this book just gives me Peaky Blinders vibes in a spooky Australian coastal town. And is that what you were going for?
That's exactly what I was going for. It's so funny because, during COVID and everyone's binge watching old TV shows, and that's where we discovered Peaky Blinders. And of course, we had like 6 seasons, or I think it was 5 seasons during that time, of these shows to watch. So every night, after the struggle of getting through yet another day in lockdown, put the baby to bed and just have your own adult time and watch your show.
I love that you are watching Peaky Blinders and you're looking at the puddles and the grit and everything, and the rest of us are just watching Cillian.
Yeah, I know. He's very easy to watch, easy on the eye. It's fun to use him as a character because he's so clever and like always one step ahead of everyone else. So I tried to do that with the character of Detective Shaw as well, just playing that mastermind game with other people.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's such a great description of it too. And I love that you were trying to manifest Killian into your life. I
Yeah,
respect
I know.
I
Yeah.
respect that.
Well, if I ever meet him, I can say I wrote a character about him.
I have to mention him in
That
the
makes him fall in love with me.
Now, although both your novels are historical fiction, this is very different to What If You Fly, with its gothic overtones and its psychological suspense and its thriller vibes. What was it about this story that you felt that you had to write it this way?
Yeah, I think with What If You Fly, because it was, really my apprenticeship novel, and it was just the one that I was experimenting with writing. It was the first time I'd ever tried to write anything. But I think with the second one, with this one, The Woman in the Waves, I really sort of found the genre and style that I like to write. So that darker, sort of bordering on horror and grotesque sort of vibe. Like I've always watched horror movies. They're my comfort watch. So I wanted to really write like a horror novel, but after the Curtis Brown course ended, we were able to pitch our manuscripts to agents, and I pitched it to them as a psychological horror. And the agent there was like, don't pitch it as horror. It's not horror. It's not like Stephen King. It's not that. It's gothic historical fiction. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll do that then. Um, but yeah, I also really wanted to experiment with writing from the deep point of view and the first person perspective. And I went into it knowing I wanted to write an unreliable narrator as well. So yeah, those were the things that I wanted to try and do. But yeah, I think also with writing this one, the setting, because I was living in Wollongong at the time, it sort of came a lot more easily. So I was able to focus on other aspects of the
Yeah.
book that are just as important as the setting. Yeah.
Now, are second novels like second babies? Is it easier for an author the second time around?
I think it's I think you finish writing a book and then you start thinking about the next one and you think, oh my God, how do you write a book? What steps do you take to start? I've forgotten. So I don't think it's easier. It's definitely different, each one. Maybe it is a little bit easier because you've done it before, so you think you can do it again. Um, this one was more enjoyable, I think, because when I was writing the first one, I did it in isolation. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any writer friends. I didn't, I hadn't done any writers courses or anything like that. So it was really just me doing it as like a creative outlet. But with this one, it was so much more enjoyable doing it in a community of people who are also so in love with writing and get so excited about it and give you feedback. And yeah, so I think that part is easier, but I don't think the actual sitting down to writing it is easier. Maybe for me, because my first novel, not too many people read that one. It was kind of like writing a debut in a way because it's like, well, no one has any expectations. They've not read anything of mine before, so let's just go for it.
And so do you find that, this time round it feels a lot more exciting, with the launch coming up
Yeah.
and publication?
Definitely. And I was telling Kelly this the other day too, like, compared to the first novel's release, like I've absolutely blown away with the excitement and the encouragement and the support and the people who have read it or are going to read it or have bought it, who are posting about it. I couldn't have expected anything like that, and it has surpassed my expectations for sure. So yeah, it's definitely way more exciting, way more enjoyable.
That's good. I love the sound of it. I love that it feels more enjoyable and that you're really enjoying what you're going through at the moment.
Yeah, I think you always at the back of your mind as you're writing dream about what it might be like to launch your own book, and it's easy to get wrapped up in that's the reason why you do it. Obviously, I just love writing and I love the writing community. I would write anyway, even if I didn't have a book published. But I think it's important to pause a little bit, especially during this period, and think about the things that you've been able to do. And it has been hard work. Like I'm a total introvert, so you know, meeting people and socializing, as much as I enjoy it, and I've found some really, really good friends, you included, throughout this process, it definitely still takes a lot of energy. I think we're all introverts in a way because we're writers. So we love getting back into the writing cave and just writing or reading. Like we just love snuggling up on the couch and reading. But yeah, like I've worked hard to create all those connections that I didn't have the first time. So yeah, I am proud of it.
That's good. And what kind of research did you need to do to be able to write confidently about lighthouses and mermaids?
Yeah, I know a lot. I think I started by reading some lighthouse keeper memoirs. So, like this, for like the practical and logistical research, like how to run a lighthouse, what jobs are involved, but also like the psychology of someone it would take to run a lighthouse. You know, they have to be okay with isolation and be okay with, working throughout the night all alone, very regimented and structured. And then also like the impacts that that would have on their families. So I read a couple of good memoirs about that, which were helpful. Um, I also, because it's set during the 1920s, I had to read a lot about, post World War One period and what psychology or the temperament of the time was like, men coming back from war or they had been home for a few years and no one spoke about the horrors that they had experienced. So they're dealing with a lot of trauma in probably not the most healthy way by being very close-lipped and not speaking and not processing any of that. So yeah, understanding that as well. I did a lot of research into the mermaids. That was a bit easier actually. The mermaid myth is a true myth, like it's a real Indigenous story of creation of the Five Islands, which is from the Illawarra region. And I first came across that story down at Wollongong at the harbour. They have these like tiles with these mermaids on them and like who they are and what they are. So yeah, I read all about her and that story, and I worked closely with an Indigenous cultural sensitivity reader just to make sure that I was doing it respectfully and in the right way and all of that. So yeah, that was a good process too, because I'd never done anything like that before. Um, I think that's about it. Oh no, I did in like the writing of the book, come across this. I didn't know anything about it, but Australia did actually have prohibition during the 1920s, a period of, yeah, when alcohol was illegal, and it was just in Canberra, and it was the sale and the making of alcohol wasn't allowed, which I thought was so interesting because you could buy it in New South Wales and just bring it across and that's fine, but you just can't do it in the ACT. So I thought that was really an odd piece of information.
I didn't know that either. That's really
Yeah.
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Hmm.
Now, what I'm interested in, Camille, is do you layer in the twists and breadcrumbs as you write, or do you go back and add them to the manuscript?
What do you do?
I layer them in as I go.
Okay. Yeah, actually, I can see that in your extracts that you send me. I go back.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, no, I wrote the whole like messy first draft, and then yeah, it was like, oh, this might be a really good opportunity to create like some foreshadowing. So then I would go back and yeah, if it's already there subconsciously, then I would like bring it out a bit more, or yeah, I would just put it in. So yeah, although the twist. No, you know, even the twist at the end, I was like surprised by it as I was writing because I think the best twists surprise even you,
Yes, I
the
agree.
writer.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think it's good to know that you want to put a twist in, but don't necessarily know exactly how it's going to work out. And then you just go along with the writing and it just suddenly appears in the right way. And then you think, yes, that's how I'm going to do it.
I think so, because that's how mine appear. I'm right.
Yeah.
Oh, that happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's great.
And what do you hope that readers will take away after reading this book?
Um, so I hope that they get a sense of immersion into the world of the book. Um, I hope that they get a feeling of wonder. Maybe they understand Missy a bit better, maybe not agree with her choices, but understand why she made them. Um, yeah, I think she's not really a typical historical fiction heroine because she's not stereotypically feminine. She didn't have a mother growing up to show her how to do all these feminine things. So she's very like works on a fishing boat, smells of fish, wears trousers. But then at the same time, she's still quite alluring and naive and vulnerable. So she's kind of like a siren, like she lures you in, and then she might also be a bit dangerous. So yeah, I hope they feel that sense of yeah, like they're being lured in, and then yeah.
Love that. I love that description of her. It all ties in. It's beautiful. Now, did you always know that you wanted to be a writer?
No, I didn't. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I studied French in high school, and for a long time, that's what I wanted to be, a French teacher, and I was a French teacher. And I taught for a couple of years in a high school, but it was a very like exclusive boys' high school with lots of pressure, and I had to coach sport on weekends and do debating on Friday evenings, and it was way too much for a first year out of uni teacher. So as like a creative outlet, I would just daydream about my debut novel and on the train, on the commute, I would just type and write down these words. And that's really how I came to writing because I used it as a creative outlet from my day job. And I think a lot of people start that way. They have this creative impulse or they have this urge to do something that's not just wake up, go to work, come home, go to sleep, wake up, go to work. Um, they want to do something for themselves. So yeah, I started then, but obviously that was many years ago. And I thought, oh, no, I'm not a writer. This is just something for fun. But then when we had John, my son, and I found myself at home, breastfeeding, napping. What do? I didn't just want to watch daytime TV because I was getting very depressed doing that. I thought, oh, I'll just open up my laptop and read through this. I think I had maybe 20,000 words and see if it's something that I want to keep doing. So, yeah, I did it then and thought, oh, I'll just try and finish it. I don't need to publish it. I don't need to do anything, but just to say that I finished my book, that would be enough. So that was the goal, just to have a finished manuscript. But then, of course, once you finish, you think, okay, well, I guess I can do the next step. So yeah, one thing led to the next thing and the next thing.
And I mean, that was the book that you were shortlisted for the Hawkeye Prize for. And then this book won the Hawkeye Prize. So it's just in increments. You
Yeah.
became, yes. And so you became a writer almost by just something to do. And yet you're an amazing writer, Camille. It's like you
Well, I think as
were
well,
meant to do this.
I love read. I've always loved reading, and I think you're the same. You've always loved reading, and you read and you think, oh, this author does something I would love to try, or you read something and you think I could do that better.
Yeah,
So you do, you try, and then you just find that you love it. So yeah.
I'll agree with that. Often with, with reading, you think, I could do this.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Just have to sit down and do it. That's all. So,
Yeah.
would you share a piece of advice to aspiring writers?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many good advice and there's so many good places to get advice from. There's so many good podcasts. This is one of them, and yours is one of them as well, Fiona. And I think the best thing that I did was find writer buddies
Yes.
to share work with, to talk about writing with. As I said before, it was a completely different experience writing my first book all alone with no, outside, not help, but just like people you can talk to about writing, compared to this book, which, as we were talking about before, was so much more enjoyable because you get to share the process with other people going through the same thing. So I think, yeah, that's probably the best thing that happened to me was finding the people that, you can share it with. And I
Yeah.
think the best way to do that is you join your writing courses or you go to, your literary events or book launches and things like that.
Yes, I agree. And I think that once you've found your tribe, you get a lot more confidence from that.
Definitely. Yeah.
Can you share a book that you are enjoying at the moment or you've just finished reading?
Oh, one I just finished reading was a debut called The Lamb by Lucy Rose. It's a folk horror, and it uses cannibalism as a metaphor for love. It's
Oh
really
gosh.
good. The prose is amazing, really, really cool. I loved it. But what I'm rereading at the moment, it's for my PhD, is Devotion by Hannah Kent. Have you
Oh,
read that?
yes, it's a
So
beautiful
beautiful.
book.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, definitely love that book. And I read it when it first came out a few years ago, and rereading it now, I'm like, I know why I love this so much. It's so good.
Now, are you allowed to tell us what you're working on now?
Yeah, so um next year will be um the re-release of my debut, which has a new title, a new cover. It's basically a whole new rewritten book. It's called Codename Funnel Web.
Such a
And that
great
will be,
title.
yeah, so cool. That will be coming in, I think, April next year. Um, so there's that one which I'll be editing and, polishing. And then I'm also working on the novel for my PhD, which is a witchy novel. It's what with my comps. It was Devotion by Hannah Kent, Robert Eggers' The Witch, and The Craft, the movie. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah. But it's set in Bulli, which is another South Coast town in 1887. It was a coal mining town, and in 1887, a coal mine explosion wiped out all the men and boys of the town. So that was yeah, that's the thing that sparked my imagination.
Yes, you can see that that would make for a great story.
Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, that's time on our interview. I
Wow, that went fast.
it went, it went so quick with our little technical hitches, but
Yeah.
that's okay because you won't even hear them, everyone, because I will smooth all those technical glitches out. I'd like to thank you, Camille, for chatting with me and for being Reading by Candlelight's March crime and thriller book box author.
Thank you so much, Fiona. It's been so wonderful, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
And The Woman in the Waves is a masterful mix of historical fiction and psychological suspense set in the 1920s. It's quite unlike anything I've ever read before. The descriptions of the sea and the landscape are so vivid, you can almost smell the salt, and the gothic vibe adds tension and depth to this suspenseful story. I'm looking forward to finishing it soon because I didn't want to rush it because it's just so lyrically beautiful and I'm enjoying the journey so much. So I'm certain our readers are going to love reading it as much as I am right now. So Thank you all for coming along tonight and watching us live. If you are watching this on YouTube or listening to the podcast, I do hope you've enjoyed this episode. Let us know what you think in the Reading by Candlelight Facebook group or on socials. Thank you again, Camille.
Thanks.
And wishing everybody happy reading and goodbye for now.